Okay, class, settle down, settle down. We're going to be continuing our history lectures.
Hooray. Sorry. And I'm not supposed to talk now. Sorry.
Oh, it's okay.
Just excited for
Some
history.
teachers get really mad about students just talking. I find it frankly charming.
Well, great.
So obviously when we left off last time, we had just reached industrialization, wage labor and factories are being introduced. There's now this stark dichotomy being made between workers and bosses, and the bosses want obviously the workers to work as much as possible for as long as possible for as many days as possible, and the workers want as much money as they can get, but they don't want to only be working. So there's real conflicting interests there.
I like the lens of the tension between boss and worker. It's interesting. Go on.
Yeah, I wouldn't say all history can be filtered through that lens, but a lot of it, and it's extremely useful and good. There's even lots of stories about things like clocks being changed during the day. It was pretty common back then. People didn't have their own watches.
Oh, that's fucked up, Teach.
Yeah, could you imagine if I changed the clock back and made this class twice as long and tried to pull one over on you kids?
Well, I mean, especially if you have a contractual obligation to pay us for our labor time in the classroom.
But the workers, they didn't take that lying down.
Oh, hell yeah.
Cobblers in the first shoe factories in Lynn, Massachusetts would stop work for games, political debates, read the newspaper to each other, or head off to the pub. Factory superintendents complained of the general indispositions of the employees to work steady.
Fuck that, man. People with a disposition to work steady are squares.
That's why you're one of my best students.
Amongst us Zoomers, we've got a consensus. A political priority is to shorten and then eventually abolish the workday.
Well, men who built barrels, which were a major industry in the early American economy, I think agreed with you. While they were normally paid for 6 days of work, when they came in on Saturday morning, they would sit around on upturned barrels, playing poker and drinking beer, lounging about until they received their weekly pay, when the beer drinking would continue, according to historians of the industry, late into the night on Sunday, so that when what was called, quote, Blue Monday came around, it was spent doing more or less nothing. So simply by being brashly lazy at work, these workers eked themselves out a sort of 3-day weekend.
That's like prefigurative weekends. If everyone just starts taking prefigurative 3-day weekends until we achieve it, that would actually work. It's like a work slowdown. It's a real tactic, teacher. A work slowdown. Oh my God. That's such a valuable tactic for our lifetime.
Yeah, it's like a work slowdown, but they weren't making any demands. The demand was just, we're going to do this. What are you going to do about it?
That's dope.
And yeah, this just, it's all over the history. I'm focusing on American history here, but it's from all over. But, immigrant workers in New York City shipyards would infuriate their bosses by taking breaks for candy, cake, trips to the saloon for whiskey, leisurely lunches. British-born workers in New Jersey pottery factories were known for great bursts of activity, but then to disappear for several days at a time.
That's sick. That's good history. Keep it coming.
I'll read you a quote from an employer of shoemakers in Massachusetts in 1878. He said, "Nothing saves men from debauchery and crime so much as labor." And that kind of view was typical of bosses at the time, who were just very wrapped up in this Protestant work ethic, this idea that work is inherently good for itself. Leaders of the Ohio Bureau of Labor in 1879 said, "Labor is not a curse. It is not the number of hours per day that a person works that breaks them down, but the hours spent in dissipation. Give men plenty to do, and a long while to do it, and you will find them physically and morally better." So that's just contrary to every bit of science we know. That's just not true.
Wait, did you say the Protestant work ethic is disproven by science, teacher?
Oh, absolutely. The version of it that despises idleness as something inherently evil, which the idle hands are the devil's playthings, this idea is part of the Protestant work ethic, is bizarre and inhuman because we all need idleness to maintain our sanity and physical health as well.
Yeah, we need like a balance between activity and idleness.
So these kind of everyday protests took place for decades, a century of industrialism before organized labor movements. But in 1866, a brand new organization called the National Labor Union asked Congress to pass a law mandating an 8-hour workday. And their efforts failed, but that was the first entry. That was narrative work. They were getting it out there.
Shit gets real in 1866. So before that, it was all like sort of prefigurative, vote with your feet, taking weekends.
I'm certain people were making demands of their own employers, but this was the first time that limiting the workday on a national scale as a legal framework for everyone was kind of put on the map. And the next year, the Illinois legislature actually passed a law mandating an 8-hour workday, but many employers refused to cooperate, and a massive strike erupted in Chicago. So it's May 1st, 1867, and this day became known as May Day. The law was struck down, and it kind of was seen as a failure, but 20 years later served as the inspiration for a second May Day event on May 1st, 1886. A national strike was called, and 300,000 workers participated. There were massive riots for days, and bombs were thrown at police. And this is kind of the starting point of the May Day tradition as we know it today. It was a day for workers' rights, this national strike. But still, 1886, there's a lot of struggles to be told. This class is coming to an end. I'll just mention that it wasn't until 1938, when the Fair Labor Standards Act was put into place, that the work week was officially limited to 40 hours. About 75 years since that first putting it on the map moment I mentioned, they finally did it.
Well, teacher, I gotta say, this was a mind-blowing lesson. This is why I love history. Really weird, really dope. Thank you for just another great round of teaching. And I think I speak on behalf of all the kids.
Oh yeah, I see they're all nodding. Good kids silently nodding.
You know, they recently cut the budget for class sizes, so we've actually got 34 kids in this room. And for me to look back and see 33 nodding heads.
Proud moment for you as a student who speaks the most.
To know that I have their consent as a delegate on behalf of all the students means a lot.
Oh, and looking at the clock, which I haven't tampered with, it looks like the bell is about to ring. 3, 2, 1. That's the bell.
Everyone get out your apples. Line up the 34 apples on teacher's desk to show how much we appreciate his history lesson. But, as we discussed, silence, please. There we go. And here's my apple. Thank you, teacher.
Yeah, it's interesting. I could hear you put down the apple, but I haven't heard any of the other students put down the apple. So they're piling up here, these apples.
Can we all give a silent round of applause for the teacher? Look at that. They're all miming clapping, but not actually making contact.
Yeah, that's both silent and heartwarming.
So I'm just going to do a few audible claps on behalf of us. But they'll continue silently clapping.
Okay, stop with all the clapping. You kids go enjoy your break. When you come back, we're going to learn about how to be nice to each other online. But we dedicate about 30% of the day to at school nowadays in the future.